Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of 15-Minute Challenger. And today we've got the amazing Ian from Real Brands. And Ian will explain a little bit about what they do. But needless to say, they're solving one of the biggest issues that we're all concerned about right now in terms of sustainability and climate change. And so it's a really exciting time to be talking to Ian. And just as a reminder, the 15-Minute Challenger is all about finding entrepreneurs and business leaders in organizations that are looking to not just build for-profit businesses, but ones that have the dual reason of having a social purpose, a global purpose, an environmental purpose. And Ian does exactly that, solving probably the biggest challenge that we all face as a global society. So Ian, maybe tell us a little bit more about what Real actually does, and
Sure.
we can go from there.
Well, thank you for the generous introduction, Paul. That's great. So my name is Ian Bates. I'm the founder of Real Brands.
Right.
And in a nutshell, what do? We help predominantly brands redesign their packaging and their supply chains using new materials, new technologies. That might be clever coatings, nano coatings or bio coatings to make, for example, a fiber board grease resistant or water resistant. So we're constantly innovating with packaging, and our primary objective is to reduce the carbon footprint, make the packaging more stand out on every possible level, from the sort of consumer experience to the factory experience, to from a point of view of sustainability. We will always try and design out single-use fossil-based plastics. And we tend to work within the food industry, but we do have some non-food clients, but we tend to work within the food industry because that's where it's really quite complicated. Lots of hygiene issues. It's a very fast-moving sector, and our clients, they tend to be they're fish producers, or they're snack producers, or they're dessert producers, or confectionery manufacturers. We've only been going for about 2 years, something like that. Relatively short period of time.
And how did you? What was the kind of inspiration? Because I think you told me that you initially weren't taking the sustainability angle when you started the business, and you're thinking back in the day, but that shifted over time. And how did that happen exactly?
We've always had sustainability in our DNA. Actually, that's always been a key part of our thinking.
Right.
When we actually started Real Brands, it was going to be all about developing media, event, festival type of products.
Right.
For carrying beer, things like paper ice buckets and cardboard tents and all those sorts of things, where the brand owner would actually be paying for the media, for the packaging, the point of sale, etc. We shifted primarily because we don't advertise as a company, and what's happened over the last 18 months is that people come to us and say, look, we've got this challenge, will you help us fix it? So that we've got pulled into I would say the sort of general food sector, and we'll be asked into a food brand, and it'll start off where they'll have a particular problem. It might be that they're trying to develop a plastic-free pouch, or remove the plastic in a liner of a carton, or remove expanded polystyrene for fish boxes, or something like that.
Right.
And we'll then get drawn into their world of, oh, you fix that, now can you fix this, and can you fix that? So we're problem solvers.
Yeah, but your passion is in sustainability and getting rid of single-use plastic in favor of plant-based sustainable materials, which effectively can be either planted in your garden or processed back into nature. And I think that particular challenge, everybody sees the amount of plastic packaging that you come back with from a supermarket, and so clearly part of your mission is to phase that out and find new materials. And the way that,
Yeah.
that I met Ian is because I was working at Little Moons, and we wanted to phase out over 6 million plastic trays that effectively were single-use plastic, and it's not a great place to be. And so Ian's developed a reputation as somebody who can help brands make that transition into sustainability, biodegradable materials, etc. And that's incredibly difficult for brands to do. It's a daunting challenge. So when we met you guys, it was great because you guys really know what you're talking about. So it's great.
One of the reasons why people work with us is that we don't talk nonsense. We're very technical. We're very nerdy when it comes to packaging and the materials, and we don't hold back. We say as it is. There is an awful lot of misinformation in the world of packaging.
Yeah.
And the challenge that food producers face is that they will go to their existing suppliers for whatever the material or product is, and they won't necessarily get the full picture. They won't necessarily know what the alternatives are. I'm not saying we know all the alternatives, but we know a lot of them. And because we're moving across different packaging formats and different material technologies, we're in a good position to offer relevant and up-to-date advice. And because we're always looking to challenge the norm, when somebody says it can't be done, so well, you're sure about that? It actually might be possible. Packing, it's challenging to put a fizzy liquid in a paper bottle, but it can be done, and it is being done.
Wow.
And you'll see that coming to market very shortly.
So what you're talking about there is theoretically Fanta, Coke going in sustainable packaging rather than what it's got at the moment. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about the scale of the problem that you're trying to solve. I mean, I know that I worked for quite a fairly small brand, and we had over 10 million pieces of plastic that we were using a year that were, made maybe from recycled material, but were still single-use plastic. What's the size of this problem? Like, how much plastic are we burying? How big is this issue?
It is absolutely immense. And I could quote 5-6 billion tons of plastic entering the system every year. It's probably bigger than that. The problem is because every piece of plastic, and when I talk about plastic, I'm talking about fossil-based, oil-based plastic. Every piece of plastic that's ever been produced is still on the planet somewhere, unless it's been incinerated.
Wow.
And if you think about that for a while, that's sort of quite a worrying statistic, or very, very worrying fact. And the problem with plastics is they start off in one format and then they change into nanoplastics, as we know, and microplastics, which enter the food chain and therefore potentially poisonous. I wouldn't call myself an eco warrior. I'm actually a creative pragmatist.
Okay.
And I think what's produced by nature needs to be reabsorbed by nature. And by producing things that are man-made and complex, like plastics and laminates, all we're doing is creating contaminated waste, which is difficult for us to reprocess. And we've demonstrated that we don't have the infrastructure, and there isn't the value in reprocessing these materials, which is why we export the majority of our plastic waste in the United Kingdom right now. Something like only about less than 10% of plastics are currently recycled in the UK. Less than 10%.
Wow.
In the US, it's something like 4 or 5%.
Jeez. Okay.
So we have not got plastic recycling resolved in by any shape or form. It is a massive challenge.
Wow.
So we have to, we have to tackle it. Our biggest challenge is we should be working with the really mega brands like Coca-Cola and P&G and Unilever, and we do talk to these guys and we have a relationship with them, but they're like massive oil tankers. They're very difficult to move direction.
Yeah. So
we tend to find it's much easier to get traction with owner drivers, much more focused on achieving things quickly. For all sorts of different reasons. They haven't got many layers of management to make decisions quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also interesting that the dynamic of when you work in a large business is that every decision you make, whether it's adding a penny here or whatever it is that you do, has
Yeah,
huge implications
absolutely.
for your cost line. And so
Yeah,
changing things in a big business is just inevitably quite slow. And
yeah,
we had our first guest on last week, and Jody was talking about companies not having a purpose. If you're not purpose driven as a big business, the writing is on the wall for you. And it's for reasons like this that small brands have higher levels of trust with their consumers. They have higher levels of loyalty than these big brands.
mm,
I think it's absolutely true that small brands react more quickly, but the big brands are clearly missing a trick here, and
yeah.
it's kind of fairly short-term thinking. They're just thinking about today's bottom line rather than
Yeah.
tomorrow's, and that's a
Do you
pity.
know, yeah, one of our clients is a fish processor. Okay, processor.
Okay.
Privately owned company. We were set the challenge where they were putting fish in a plastic bag, putting it into a corrugated box. They were then putting a printed litho sleeve around the box. Box was taped, litho sleeve, and then shipping it out to the likes of Costco.
Okay.
So multi layers of packaging, a lot of packing time. Didn't look great, actually. So we've ended up with one carton, which just pops up really easily.
Hmm.
It's mono material. The fish goes straight into the box, no plastic. It's got a self-seal dagger lock system, so there's no tape or any of that nonsense.
Right.
That then goes into a corrugated SRP with a sort of tear off top through the supply chain. So massively simplified. We reduced cost, improved the impact of the product. The product's actually selling better.
Hmm.
And it's got the, I don't know, your viewers will be aware of the plastic free trust mark or certification mark because it's entirely plastic free. We're using a material that we've developed with a UK manufacturer where it's a plastic free paperboard laminate, which is degradable. It's repulpable and widely recycled.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
Massive, made a huge. And with the same client, we're also taking their fish waste and we're sending it to a partner's plant about 10 miles away, 15 miles away, where we're turning that fish waste into bioenergy,
Wow.
making corrugated board, which then gets sent to a local corrugated box manufacturer and resupplied to the fish processor. So carbon neutral, it's fish waste powered. It's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
The company's called Three Oceans. You can check them out.
And
And
effectively, what you're saying is you not only made them plastic free, but in terms of the cost to them and the
yeah,
solution,
yeah,
it's more efficient cost wise, and actually the sales are
correct.
higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
To sort of tick all these boxes, it has to be commercial. It has to
mhm,
be sustainable.
yeah,
There has to be multiple wins. It can't just be one tick in a box. It doesn't work like that anymore.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it shows that this old assumption of having to go green is more costly, and that's what a lot of brand owners will think that
Mm.
actually, it's I'm going to take a couple of percentage points off my bottom line margin. But actually, with guys like yourself, where you can get it to a cost neutral, even a cost savings, it's almost a no brainer. And it's actually the brands
Yeah.
who move quickly and get on this that are going to be in a great position to capture that
Without a
kind of
shadow of a
market.
doubt.
Yeah. So tell me, what does a world where real brands have been incredibly successful, your whatever your vision of success, whether it's a global business, whether you've taken that 5 million bits of plastic a year and they're now completely biodegradable, they're going back into the ecosystem. What does success look like? What's a dream?
Um, Success for me is when we see all the leading brands uh, taking the lead from the dynamic brand owners, probably the sort of people that are watching this video,
Yeah.
um, and actually realize that actually the consumers had enough of um, something that's completely unsustainable economically and environmentally. We have to move to a different model of doing business.
Yeah.
We can't carry on in the way we are. And I think taking a holistic approach to solving problems is the way businesses have got to go. And the reason why that's so challenging for the big companies is that they're so siloed into their different operational responsibilities. And the people in those businesses are rewarded within those silos, sometimes with conflicting KPIs or responsibilities.
Yes, I remember that.
You've got to take an overarching view. Sometimes you might lose something here, but you gain it over here. You might add some cost here, but you double your sales. Or you've got to take a holistic approach.
Yeah.
You've got to move many moving parts before you actually solve some of the challenging issues that we face today. And technology plays a massive part in this.
And so, to kind of clarify for you, success would look like a Procter & Gamble, a Unilever, a Reckitt, all these kind of big global FMCG companies who are responsible for a great deal of this waste, and of course, their own brands, Tesco, Sainsbury's, etc., which are huge.
I mean, we do work with some of these brands on the periphery on certain sort of project things. We work with Unilever and Coca-Cola on a couple of things, and PepsiCo, funny enough. But they're slow, they're cumbersome, and we get frustrated with them. They get frustrated with us because they can't make decisions in a very dynamic way.
Yeah. Okay. So the final question that we always end on is, if the people watching could do anything to help you create this vision of the world that you're looking for, which is, those 5 million pieces of plastic are now sustainable. We have all the leading companies involved, all the smaller companies involved. What could people do to help make that vision come to life?
What, I mean, apart from picking the phone up?
Sure.
I suppose we don't advertise as a business, so we rely entirely upon goodwill and recommendations. And as I said to you at the beginning of this call, before you put the camera on, I said, look, this isn't going to be a sales pitch. We're not really interested in that. We want to work with people who are genuinely committed in getting things done. So through recommendation, it may be that the person watching this video hasn't got anything specifically that they wanted to work on, but they may know somebody who does need our help. We one of our partners is A Plastic Planet, funny enough, an organization I mentioned earlier. So we're advisors to Plastic Planet. So when somebody wants to go for the trust mark and they then need the technical help to get that done, they'll often get referred. They won't just get referred to us, but they'll often get referred to us as a unbiased, no nonsense. These people will help you navigate what is a very complicated journey sometimes.
Yeah.
So I suppose answer your question, help, recommendation.
Yeah.
We don't need cash. We don't need anything like that. I think we just need introductions.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Well, that's the end of the kind of 15 minutes plus. And I'd say,
sorry, we ran over, didn't we?
It went fast. It goes fast. I'm trying to stick to the time, but it's hard. But that's so inspiring and so interesting. I think packaging isn't a space that people traditionally think is a really sexy area of solving world problems, but actually the scale of the problem we're talking about, 5 billion pieces of plastic every single year are being added to the total. They're just sitting here on our planet with absolutely no way to deal with it. And that's clearly an unsustainable sustainable way to be. So it's great to see
5 billion tons, 5 billion tons, and probably double that.
Wow. Okay.
It's just a scary situation. But thank you for listening. And
But the amazing thing is that there are solutions out there to these problems. And they're not going to cost brands more than what they're currently doing. And there's people like Ian who will hold your hand through the process. And so it's fantastic what you do, Ian. And thank you so much for joining. And I look forward to catching up with you again. So thanks.
Great. Thanks all.
Yeah,
great talking to you.
I appreciate it.